Welcome back to our first quarter meat market minutes for 2021. We have a group of ag economists from around the Southeast region, and we're at our kind of 1 year anniversary of this program. And so we're going to start off with beef and let Charlie Martinez from University of Tennessee talk to us a little about what's going on in the beef market. So thanks for joining us, Charlie, and go ahead whenever you're ready.
Hey, appreciate it, JB. I got the luck of the draw and got beef this time, so we'll just jump straight into it. At the time of this recording, there's some stuff that has occurred before. There's going to be stuff that occurs after. And so the first part was, of course, 2 weeks ago, we had Uri hit the snowstorm that hit the United States. And according to the last retail report, which would have been last Friday, we're in March 4th. So last Friday, which would have been the last Friday of February, reported that slaughter was up 20.7% compared to a week before, which would have been when Uri was hitting. And so there might have been some short-term or short-run effects that happened in Texas. I know some friends couldn't, one, they didn't have power, but two, they also had issues getting product at their local grocery store. And then following that now, this week, it's been announced that some states are gonna open back up, especially Texas and Mississippi. And I know Mississippi is going to open up here, rapidly, pretty quick, and Texas open up on March 10th. But that also is going to open up the opportunity for restaurants to get back to capacity. That's going to be dependent upon each restaurant. But within that, that's going to rely on the consumer's willingness to go back. What mask mandates are there, or their willingness to go via the shot or anything of that nature. And then as we move forward into March, April, and May, the availability of the vaccination and the people getting the vaccination, that could influence their willingness to go back to the restaurants. So at the retail level, what we're seeing here, this is again a monthly, keep in mind this is monthly retail beef for choice in the United States. We don't have February right now, but we do have January. And again, it's important to remember that this is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and they only get their sample in the second week of the month. And it only looks at the sticker price, not necessarily any part of a discount due to a membership or anything of that nature. But as you can tell, the key part to take away from this graph is that we were on par. We really haven't changed between September through January in terms of price, although it is still above the 2020 price and above the average of 2015 to 2019. Now, this is just looking at choice. If we do look at all fresh monthly, kind of the same story. We're still on the same trend line from September through January. But again, we're still above the 2020 numbers and also the 15 to 19 average. And so we don't have February here. We're in March right now. I would, expect it to stay on trend, if not go a little above. And the reason why is if we start looking at the beef cutout value, we're still high in the weekly, from a weekly perspective, we're still relatively high compared to 2020 and above the 15-19 average substantially. And so if we think about prices last year during this time, we're above, and then we're at the wholesale level, we're above last year. We can suspect that probably at the retail level, when we start going to get ready for the summer and grilling season, that we could see increased prices at the retail level. And now a question that I had was, what is carrying this price, or what is causing this price to be that much higher compared to last year and well above whatever the 15 and 19 average was for a given week? And so I went ahead and I pulled out two different cuts that I wanted to highlight. This first one is the loin strip prices. As you can tell, we're well above the 2020 number, as well above the 15 to 19 average. And so we start thinking about these middle cuts on the carcass. This could be a function of demand at the retail level for these certain types of steaks, or these certain types of cuts that have become steaks coming for the grilling season. And then the same story holds true in the wholesale beef ribeye prices. Although this one is starting to decrease and flatten out a little bit on a weekly perspective, you can still see that it's well above the 2020 and the 2015 and 2019 prices. And so if we start thinking about moving forward at the wholesale level, we know that information or prices, price transmission is relatively slow getting between the wholesale to the retail level. And so if we see an increase here on the wholesale level, we could probably anticipate an increase at the retail level. And that'll be a telling story whenever we finally get the February 2021 numbers from the BLS at the retail level. If we look at production You can see there we have the URI spike that occurs right here on the weekly level. And then we went ahead the next week and we finally picked back up. As I mentioned earlier, we were back up 20.7% compared to the week before. And so now we're back on par with where we were in terms of our yearly production in 2021, but still well above the 2020 and the average, the 15 to 19 average. And if we think about, we've looked at the wholesale prices for choice cuts, and we see that our production is up. We're still relatively high compared to the percent of graded beef being choice. And so if we think about moving forward, these middle cuts prices at the wholesale level increasing, it's still, and it's not because of anything else from a production difference. It could be a function of some demand or possibly anticipated demand moving forward as we open up as the United States, as each state opens up. We could anticipate a different type of demand, whether it's at restaurants or a summer season demand coming. And so as appropriate, I did had some cuts here. These are actually choice strip steaks from the Kroger here in Knoxville. Mentioning the sticker price, this would have counted for on the LS data because I'm also a member of Kroger. I got a substantial discount, so that nature is not accounted for inside the BLS data, and that's what I'm referring to, a sticker price versus the actual bought price for consumers at the retail level. And so with that, I will pass it back to you, JB.
Sounds good. Thanks, Charlie. That was good stuff. Does anyone have any questions for Charlie while we've got those pictures of those steaks on the screen?
I got one. I've been getting questioned a lot from a lot of media folks. Do you think we're going to see any kind of lingering effects in price effects for consumers because of the storm? You talked about that, the changes in, slaughter and beef production because of the storm. You think we're going to see any price impacts?
I think if we do, it might have already happened at the time of this recording versus, in the next week or so. But I wouldn't anticipate too much of a disruption because that's more regionalized to Texas on that front. But I would also ask that to you, Dr. Anderson. What's your thoughts on that?
I don't think we're going to. You get some really temporary disruption in beef production, but it is wintertime. We get winter storms, and so having disruptions really isn't uncommon. But the market effects go pretty fast. I don't think we're going to see any effect at retail in terms of retail prices to consumers.
Yeah, I would think if maybe there was like a couple of weeks long, lag in production or a couple of weeks of decreased production because of that, I could see that happening. But like you said, we only really suffered a week.
What are you doing with those onions?
So that's actually to clean my grill.
I do the same thing. Okay.
And it smells good when they're sitting there cooking as well.
So to follow up on that question, do you think, we during our conversations and past meat market minutes, we've talked about how the differences in meat sectors can adjust differently due to shocks in the system, right? Just given the length of grow out or production. And so do you think that this storm would impact prices differently for beef than, let's say, poultry, who has a shorter grow out window, so that impact may be greater?
That could be because 1 week in the poultry industry is a lot more magnified compared to the beef, supply chain. It could be the fact of a person losing birds or folks losing birds in the poultry industry, for instance. That could actually really harm supply chain line quicker and have a little bit more of effect. That's a good point, Jordan.
Do you want to have any other questions for Charlie?
I don't have a question, just something to think about, and for anybody that watches this to think about. Charlie showed box beef prices, and of course it looks very muted, the increase in prices over the first few, just because of last year, but the way it's scaled. But he also showed how much choice beef is being produced. And I've noticed that we have not had a narrowing of the choice select spread, even though choice beef production is actually a small increase from a year ago. And I'm wondering if, in realizing that people have not really gone back to start to eat at restaurants, but you start to wonder if discretionary spending, because people can't travel, if they're spending a lot of that money on buying steaks, because Charlie showed steak prices, if they're just buying steaks in the winter because they still have plenty of discretionary spending that they can't spend on something else, and that's keeping that spread wide because they're looking for higher quality choice beef. Not really a question, just a thought to ponder, because I don't know if there's a definite answer on it.
I think that's a good observation, Andrew. And I also would think something else to think about to me is, as restaurants open back up, I think you mentioned before in past videos that some folks, when the pandemic hit, they've never been an expert maybe at grilling or smoking or anything of that nature. And maybe over the pandemic, they've learned how to prep a cut of meat that they really like now. And that could also, in turn, have an effect, like smoking a ribeye, for instance, stuff of that nature. That's I think you're correct in kind of thinking about that.
I agree with you too. I think I think we've got some excellent beef demand, and it's people going to the store, and those who have jobs have some income that they haven't been able to spend on other stuff. And I think it shows up in a lot of other items like this.
Very good. Well, we'll go ahead and move on, and thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you on the next set of videos.